Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's a great pleasure and a privilege to welcome you to another event hosted this time jointly by the Albert Hirschman Center on Democracy at the Graduate Institute. I'm the director. My name is Shalini Randeria. We host this event jointly with the Diplomatic Club of Geneva. And I'm very pleased that this is the first time that we as a center are partnering with the Diplomatic Club. Of course, the Diplomatic Club is a long-standing partner of the Graduate Institute, so many of you know the Institute, but I'm happy you will get to know the Democracy Center as well. I will very briefly introduce the three speakers to you and then hand over to the president of the Diplomatic Club, Mr. Raymond Laureton, to also give you a word of welcome. We'll follow that by a talk by the former president of Bulgaria, President Plevnev. He will address you first, after which we will hand over to my colleague Gregor Mallard, who is an anthropologist and a sociologist like myself at the Institute, but he's also a member of our Hirschman Center on Democracy. He will be in charge of the proceedings from then on. He will moderate the discussion, and he will then take over from me. Let me just begin by saying a sentence each about the three guests, because I basically want to give them the floor. The problem which is exercising all our minds is the question of the future of Europe, especially the future of the EU. We have dared to call it, in a rather non-diplomatic language, the two-speed Europe, with a question mark. We hope it's not going in that direction, but we do have indications that some people would prefer it to go in that direction. So there is an attempt at a multi-speed Europe, thinking of integration along different axes and different subject areas, whether we think of North-South divisions in Europe, Eastern and Western European divisions, if we think of questions like migration and the so-called refugee crises, whether we think of the Eurozone, whether we are worried about a common foreign policy or energy policy for Europe. The Albert Hirschman Center has been looking at democracy at various levels and in various contexts. We have had one project with my colleague Gregor Mallard here before, called the European Democracy Lab Project, where we were discussing with parliamentarians the question of whether and what difference it would make if elections across Europe were coordinated in a synchronized fashion. So this is our second event in which we are debating European issues here with you. My guests this evening are, as I just mentioned, the former president of Bulgaria, President Plevnev. A very warm welcome to you, sir. He was president between 2012 and 2017, but he has interestingly had a very interesting life before that and also after being president. Yes, there is life after presidency, as we see in his case, and that is, he decided that it's good to have a short-term engagement with politics. So he was an entrepreneur, and especially in Germany, where he was in the building and construction industry, and he lived in Germany for 8 years, speaks excellent German as a result, and he has gone back to doing business, leaving politics to others, and we will hear from him what kinds of ideas he tried to put into practice while he was the president, and what he would then recommend to his colleagues for the time after. My second guest is Ulrike Lunacek, who is a friend of many years standing. Ulrike is a member of the Austrian Green Party. She was vice president of the European Parliament. She was the special rapporteur for Kosovo. She has been one of the most engaged Green politicians who have been extremely active on the question of Ukraine, but one of the other major issues which has exercised her politically has been the question of women's rights. This is where we go back to many years of campaigning and engagement together, I think from 1992. That is as far back as both of us were together campaigners on the question of reproductive rights and women's rights. My third guest is Professor Tilfan Reyden. He has a misleading name. It sounds Dutch, but it is actually German, but he lives in Canada. He is professor of, he has a Canada Research Chair in German and European Studies. He's a specialist in European history, German history, and also Jewish history. And he is the only one on this podium who has no political experience. So we will have not only an outsider to politics, but we will also have an academic discussing with two sort of active, ex-active politicians. And the reason we think this will be an interesting debate is since you are no longer in politics, we hope you will share with us much more openly some of your views on populism, on Brexit, on the nature of illiberal democracies in Europe, on the kinds of challenges which the EU is facing. So thank you very much for being with us tonight. And with that, I would like to invite you, Mr. President, to first give a talk, and then we will have you here. But I would, but I wanted him up here, and then I will give the word to the president of the Club Diplomatique. So I hope I'm following diplomatic protocol correctly.
Yeah, no problem. And I know you're very anxious to listen to the real president. I'm just the president of the Diplomatic Club. Mr. President, Shalini, Excellencies, dear member of the Diplomatic Club, dear students, once again, it's a big pleasure to have an extraordinary event together with the Graduate Institute, but also with the Albert Hirschman Center on Democracy and the Mission of Bulgaria. And it's an extremely important topic we're going to tackle today. Just one word, Mr. President, about the Diplomatic Club. It's supported by the Swiss and the Geneva authorities and by the Foundation for Geneva. And our mission is to bring together the different aspects of the Geneva, international Geneva, academic, diplomatic, business, cultural, stimulating exchanges, strengthening the links with the international Geneva, and Switzerland, but also to stimulate the reflection and the debate on topical issues and on hot issues like tonight. And to speak about Europe in Switzerland is not an easy task. We're not the most pro-European country. We have excellent relations with the European Union. But as you know, we're still on a bilateral basis, and discussion between the EU and Switzerland are always quite an issue. Well, the European Union has been faced with big challenges, including Brexit, migratory crisis, wave of regional independence, the rise of populism, Euroscepticism. And it is in this very difficult contact that your country, Bulgaria, assumed now the EU presidency for the first time since your accession to the EU in 2007. And I think it's a great responsibility that has been met with, as we can observe, enthusiasm and energy. But I'm sure you're going to talk a little bit more about it later on. But in the recent months, a debate has emerged on how to revitalize the EU by making it more united and stronger. And several founding states, like Emmanuel Macron, France, and Angela Merkel, Germany, we would like to go further in the integration process without being slowed down by the more reluctant states. And the goal of this integration would be to overcome the deadlock that often grips the EU due to the unanimity rule in the decision-making process. And with the Rome Declaration following the European Summit on March 27, celebrating the 60th anniversary of the founding treaty, the member states have agreed to find new roads and ideas to revitalize the European integration. And they paved also the way for a differentiated integration of Europe. So this multi-speed Europe is not without risk. We can ask ourselves if it will not marginalize some states, in particular the Eastern European state, whose membership is still relatively recent. And that's the title: will not win the East-West divide by creating more inequality and injustice. So we are looking forward to your remark and to the discussion. I would also, on my side, thank all the panelists for this, for their presence first, and secondly for the interesting discussion we are looking forward. We like provocative statements, Mr. President. So since you're not president anymore, feel free to say anything you think about the European Union, and I give you the floor.
Good evening, everyone. I'm so excited to be with you tonight. Very open-minded, easygoing, not the usual politician. Yes, I was an entrepreneur, I was a manager, I was an investor, I was a CEO, and I was a minister, and I was a president. I love, in a way, what happens in my life. It changes all the time. Very positively looking at what's next, and what's next after being a minister and a president and a CEO or an investor. And I'm now discovering a new phase of my life, very positive, I love it. I created the so-called Sofia Club, a lot of presidents acting and some who are not acting and calling me, and really asked the question, Rosa, you're smiling so much after not being in the power anymore? Is there a life after politics? Yeah, it's a very nice life. And you can enjoy it if you really believe that not the technique, but the content makes sense. And the content of being a president is not just 5 years' time, but it's a lifetime job, and it's linked to priorities, values, whatever you believe is right. You can support. And even today, sometimes I tell myself, I have so many meetings, I have so many ideas, so many visits, that probably the most exciting part of my life, the most important part of my life, is just coming to a beginning, probably to be a teacher, to be a partner, to help young startups, help people, help whoever wants, and share what I learned. And it's definitely true that I was a bit of more curious, unusual politician. I talked to everybody who is anybody on the planet. I talked to almost all head of states, head of government. I was not just a politician and a president, but also I was an engineer, a manager. In a difficult time, I had to act as a crisis manager more than as a president in many of the situations I faced. Probably I learned something which I would be very happy to share with you. And it's definitely true also that my first meeting with the Chancellor Merkel looked really like this. So she said, oh, Mr. President, you have such a wonderful German. And I said, yes. Where did you learn it? In Germany. But where then? On construction sites. And she said, which buildings, Mr. President? And I said, your building, Madam Chancellor. And that's definitely true. I went in Germany of just having a small broken ladder, getting 6,000 Deutsche Marks with a credit of 90% per year because there was a hyperinflation in my country right after the collapse of the communism. Half of the banks are broken, there is no hope, no perspective, so I decided to go to the United States, but I ended up in Germany. And I was a computer programmer, but I ended up on construction sites. But if you're open-minded to your life, I definitely believe, call it God, call it the fate, call it the sense, the content of your life. It's always giving you a hand. It's up to you to give also your hand, so it works. So it worked with me in Germany, and why I am so passionate, I will make it very clear for you, such a passionate pro-European politician, is just probably because my first working day is in Germany, and I have seen how institutions work with open face to people, how institutions, no matter, could be government, could be municipality, could be in the middle of nowhere in Germany, but it is efficient, and it is making me understand with my own fate, my own what happened to my own destiny, that whatever you are, whatever you learned, whatever your projects are, there is just one way for people, for politicians, for citizens, for business to fulfill their ideas. And this is through working and efficient institutions. If there are no institutions, there is no success. So as I have seen how the German government, the German mayors, the German construction chamber was integrating me without any knowledge, without any idea how to make construction in Germany, I ended up a couple of years later building up the very special curved ceilings with Bulgarian workers on the ground floor of the Chancellery, where exactly the Chancellor Merkel is making her press conferences. And I'm very proud of this, of course. So, yes, it is also true that I had 16 meetings with Obama. I counted every one of them. I was very proud. It's just 2 days difference. He ended up on 20th of January 2017. I was 2 days later. I had much more meetings with the Chancellor Merkel, sometimes in an unusual situation, because as I was always very curious, trying to understand more, ask more questions. For example, I was the only politician integrated with a very special advisor to the President Obama, Jeremy Rifkin, on the long-term German strategic plan, which actually is pretty interesting, because I talked to the President Xi Jinping, I talked to the Germans on how do they see Germany on the world in 2030 or 2040 and 2050, and they really have, China and Germany, a very detailed and a matter of national unity plan where they would like to see their countries by 2050, which is not the case, for example, with the United States today or some other countries in the world. To be diplomatic. But I'm not going to be. Exactly. So I'm giving you two examples. Things that happened, I was the major player to them. The one happened just 3 days ago when we had a high-level summit on the European Union, the Western Balkans. And the other one is a meeting that happened 2 years ago when I was still the acting Supreme Commander of NATO Army and head of state of Bulgaria. I was very proud to be integrated within the so-called Ariosh Group. And the Ariosh Group is a group of heads of state who are not participating in the European Council, but meet once in a year, including the heads of state of Italy, Germany, Portugal, Poland, and I was invited to be there and discuss what's going on. And even I was trusted, as it was obvious that I'm not going to participate on the new elections, and I went my own way. Actually, I'm very popular now in Bulgaria. One of the reasons to do so is that I didn't overplay with power. I truly believed that it's not important how you enter, but how you exit politics. And if you overplay, if you're there for the chair, for the power, for all the games, people see, people are wise. You should not question basic wisdom in societies. And now I am swimming in a way of acceptance and love, also because people ask me, why did you not participate? Why didn't you fight for the second mandate? Well, I decided not to do so. I was the only politician not to do so. And even today, a lot of other presidents are calling me and saying, Rossin, what were your arguments not to make another election campaign? And why do you think I should do or not do so? And kind of, I'm talking to many others, I can give concrete examples. So I was trusted to be the host of a meeting of 11 heads of state of European Union member states. I brought them to Bulgaria. We had 2 days debate, and in the beginning it was free, open-minded. I said, listen, friends, now I'm a president, but also I'm an engineer, I'm a manager. I know if we want to solve a problem, we need to point at the problem. If you hide the problem, there is no way to solve them. I love Greece very much, but part of the problem in Greece, but government after government, problems have been shifted. And probably not addressed and solved in a sustainable way, and they need exploited them on the other way, which is also the case in many other countries today. So politicians have not just to address and be concerned, just being concerned is not enough today. we need to act, and we need to bring solutions. So let us talk about the crisis and the problems in the European Union, and look for solutions. The President of Germany was telling me, I think we have 3 major crises in the European Union. The President of Poland was saying 5. And I said, I think not 1 but 11. I pointed at every one of them, of the 11 crises, which I see that we have in the European Union, because I cared about the Union. I set up a special team who was getting integrated with the team of José Manuel Barroso, later with Jean-Claude Juncker's team, and also with some of the German strategic think tanks on the European crisis. How many are they? Can we solve all of them, some of them, one of them? Can we get one out of the 11 European crises? That was my point. And really solve it. Solve it in a European way, so you could be proud of wearing the proud European T-shirt. Because we got something right. And in difficult moments, people do not expect miracles. They do not expect that on all of the 11 crises you could be genius. But get one. Show that you can address and solve issues. And out of those 11 crises, I spent 2 days with all the presidents addressing every single one of them, looking for solutions. If this is the Greek crisis, unfortunately still not solved. If this is the Ukrainian crisis, which is going to stay for a long period of time, unfortunately, if this is Brexit, or this is the crisis of nationalists and populists marching in the European Parliament, and even for the next year we have to be prepared for the next European election to see much more of them, even in the European Parliament, in the very heart of the European democracy. If this is the crisis in the relationship between the European Union and Russia, if this is the debt crisis, which is still unsolved in some European regions and governments, and if this is also the crisis that is linked to terrorism that is unfortunately striking our cities, and migration that is a crisis to stay, all of those 11 crises, I truly believe we need to address it, and we need to bring. And then my point was that if you look at all those crises, in some of them we see progress. For example, on migration, after the chaos where millions of migrants have been moved from semi-closed borders to semi-open railways and highways, and I wasn't proud of what happened in Europe in this period of time, but there is a progress today. And I can tell you much more in detail why, where, and why do we stand today a bit better on this critical issue for the European Union, which was actually about to split the European Union on West-East, the West democracies that are more liberal, more sustained, and the eastern part of the European Union countries that are a bit more liberal and a bit more aggressive, I must say, on the issue of migration. There was another crisis, for example, which was the banking crisis, which was about to split the European Union into North and South. The northern countries that made reforms that were more competitive, that have fiscal discipline and sound budgets and balance sheets, and on the other side, some of the countries on the south. By facing all those crises, it was very important to find a way to bring sustainable solutions. And then all the presidents asked me, okay, Mr. President, so you're so smart, so you're so passionate European, tell us one crisis, because you dream of getting one and getting solved. Let's get it solved here, as we all meet together, presidents and heads of state. And my point was, there is a crisis today, for example, in the Schengen area. Some of the countries have lifted up restrictions and border controls. And my point was that actually Schengen is not just a technique, is not just another integration project. Schengen is a dream of all Europeans to travel free without any borders, from Warsaw to Paris and from Sofia to Berlin. And we should not question our dreams, because if we stop dreaming, then we're not going to be attractive. We're not going to even bring people to continue dreaming with us about the Europe we would like to achieve. And Schengen is about dream. And I told them, listen, to me, it's an artificial problem we have today in the Schengen area, and we can solve it very quickly. You remember even there was a problem that Austria was about to stop and block the Brenner Tunnel, where probably 70% of Italian exports go to the European Union. So that bad it was the situation. And I told them, we can solve this crisis. We could show that we continue following what our predecessors told us to do, and thinking beyond borders, act beyond borders, bring people, cultures, industries beyond borders together. And, of course, there is no problem of keeping our borders safe and controlled. I was very devastated by what I've done, what we've seen by 2015 on the outside borders in the migration crisis, but on the other side, then we came up to the understanding that every state, but also the European Union, has to have its border under management, and there is no problem and there is no contradiction between sticking to the human rights and the rights of refugees on one side, on the other side, keep your borders safe and under control. So, tough debates, difficult time, a record number of crises, migrants, conflicts, but the European Union is a much more than just a project, a unique project for me, for integration and for continued dreaming about sustainably peaceful and prosperous Europe. The European Union is the best what progressive humanity brought as a sustainable decision for peace, because peace is only possible when countries and nations reach a certain level of integration that makes a future war impossible. And unfortunately, I was not successful in that meeting. We couldn't solve the Schengen crisis. Countries continue to play their short-sighted national interest on that. And this, I think, is a danger. But on the other side, I would hope, and I would continue preaching and praying that the European Union will continue to address and solve the crisis it faces. 3 days ago, I was with all the leaders. I am also the chairman of the high-level committee on the Bulgarian presidency of the European Union and the European Council. I had the chance to talk to Chancellor Merkel, the President Macron. I was there when he was very tough and very honest to all the other leaders by saying, and let's say, cooling off some of the hopes of Western Balkan countries on their integration process to the European Union. On the other side, I'm so proud because, again, on that summit, you could see that everyone can make a difference. Everyone can contribute to a solution. Bulgaria is not a factor globally, but in the region, Bulgaria is an unavoidable factor on the Balkans. We're not ashamed when we say the Balkans. To me, the Balkan is not a bad word. The Balkan is a beautiful, wonderful part of Europe that I wish to see fully integrated. I wish to see the European Union strong with its integration power to continue in order to attract new countries within, make them dream with you again. And I will stop here, and of course we will have a wonderful debate, I'm sure about that, by telling you that I was so proud as the President of Bulgaria to adjust the foreign policy in Bulgaria, to build up what I inherited from the former presidents and prime ministers of Bulgaria in a way that we set very simple principles. Bulgaria wants to be a trusted friend and a good neighbor to anyone in the region. And we've done it. We solved all the issues with our friends in the region. Still, there is a lot of, let's say, some contradictions, some problems on the Balkans. There is some tensions between Greece and Turkey. There is a tension between Serbia and Kosovo. There is a problem between Greece and Macedonia. There are some tensions sometimes between, for example, Croatia and Serbia and so on and so on. But we, the Bulgarians, set up a national strategy of solving all of them so that we will become a trusted neighbor and a friend. And we could pick up the fruits, the flowers of such very wise and sustainable politics, as all the leaders on the Balkans trusted us. They talked in a very honest way to us. They gave us a lot of ideas how we could help during the Bulgarian presidency, bringing up the attention of integration, of enlargement in a wise way so that it could work. So Bulgaria managed to play as a pro-European, pro-democratic power in a difficult moment of history for the Balkans, and we got a very good acceptance and result on the Sofia summit because of honest, tough, but really clear debate which worked for trust because we addressed the issues we have in a very honest way. And then we found unity. So whatever the crisis we face, 1, 11, how many there are, the European Union, there will be new ones to come, some of them might be so. The European Union has a mission to play for the planet. The European Union is, and I'm finishing with my conversation with the president of China, Xi Jinping, who was asking me one day, Mr. President, he said, what's the recipe for success on the Balkans? And I said, recipe for success? Oh my God. Do we have a recipe at all? Because the Balkans have always been a symbol of problems, dramas. And then I understood actually that in the eyes of not someone else, but China, a great power, a very consecutive and a very strong state with a very strong and long-term lasting policies and strategic plans. The president of China was telling me, I see that on the Balkans there is a very positive change. 20 years ago there were ethnic conflicts, wars, bombing, tensing. And now this positive change might be a part of a plan how to have a sustainable peace on the Balkans, which is also supported by China. And the only plan we have, and I told him, is the European integration of those countries, because that's the only way to make break reforms and become a member of a club that hopefully will continue to dream, make history, and deliver on its mission. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. President, for sharing with us your experience. I will break with diplomatic protocol and give the floor to the most remote speaker in the panel, the most remote from politics, Till van Raden. And before we talk about two-speed Europe, I'd like to deconstruct a little bit the terms of our conference, which is about two-speed Europe and the new East-West divide. And there's no one better suited to deconstruct the terms than an academic, which is why I turn to you. Because before we discuss whether there are two-speed Europe, we may want to know if there are if all the EU member states are going in the same direction. And whether we are not seeing a two-direction Europe. And we may wonder whether the liberal democracies are moving more slowly toward a more integrated liberal Europe, or whether what scholars or commentators have called illiberal democracies, which Western liberal states have sometimes situated in the east of Europe, are not moving faster outside the liberal model. So Till van Raden, how do you think is the division between East and West useful to think about these new directions that EU member states are moving toward?
Well, let me begin on a note of, is the mic working? So let me begin on a note of gratitude toward the EU politicians, so to speak. Because every day I wake up, whether it's in Montreal or when I'm visiting Europe, wherever I am, I'm grateful for the fact that the EU exists, both as a political reality and as a normative project. But as H.L. Mencken liked to say, we are all, as citizens, we're all also ashamed of the governments we live under. So there's a sense of gratitude, but there's also a sense of shame, and some of it has to do with the very 11 crises that you identified. I'm not so sure whether it's useful to map it onto a neat East-West divide, although, of course, there's a Cold War context that continues to influence and shape debates across Europe. And I think that what we will see at the end of the conversation is perhaps a reality in which there are not two Europes at two speeds, but many, perhaps countless Europes at different speeds going into different directions, and that's a good thing. Because a lot of the things that people invoke to define the European project, let's say liberalism, or let's say the rule of law, turn out to be different things to different people, and potentially things that are mutually exclusive. And that is a tension that has become much more tangible in the post-Cold War era. And in some ways that creates problems, it creates crises, but it's in a sense the return of history, as many people have commented in the 1990s, and we're still living with that return and the moral conflicts and cleavages that mark that return.
Thank you very much. Ulrike Lunacek, once we come back on this notion of illiberal versus liberal democracies, whether these terms mean very different things. Could you tell us a little bit more about what the EU is concerned about, and when they talk about illiberalism in the East, and when we say the EU was concerned about illiberalism, is it the EU Parliament, is it the Commission, is it the Council with member states? Can you tell us a little bit more about what the EU can do and has done to keep the group moving towards, let's say, a certain direction, whatever, with different nuances, of course?
Well, first of all, let me also thank the organizers for having this meeting, also for inviting me here. It's a pleasure to be here to discuss this issue in a country that is not part of the European Union, but that is important for its multilateral institutions it has here, and in Geneva specifically. And I'm saying that because, thank you for saying that you said that even when you're now in Montreal, sort of saying that it's good that EU exists, but the problems where sometimes I also feel it's for me when I go to countries outside of the EU, and I've been working a lot on the Western Balkans, the 6 countries that are not yet part of the EU, I sometimes also feel the shame that you mentioned, that we didn't and we don't get things done the way we promised to do to our own citizens, and also, for example, that you mentioned that, Rosanne, to the citizens of the 6 Western Balkan countries that are still on the way. So if we have problems inside the EU, inside of member states, be it corruption, be it lack of rule of law, be it media problems with media pluralism, and not just in the East. I remember the first time I joined the European Parliament in 2009, we had a vote on a report, no European law, on Berlusconi's Italy at that time, with his media power he had. We lost it by 3 votes. Sort of that, but it's not just the East. I don't dislike East-West divide. I think there's something to it, but not everything. But what I wanted to get back before I answer your question is, I think there's more than the 1 or 3 or 11 crises we have, and why these illiberal democracies come about, and why more and more populists, mostly right-wing, even right-wing extremists, and some also on the very far left, become so popular. And it has to do that we have lost sort of the feeling of why we identify with this Europe, with this European Union as something that is we, and not somebody else somewhere away in Brussels. And I think for me, and I grew up at the Iron Curtain. I grew up in Vienna, in the area around Vienna, in Austria. And I grew up at the Iron Curtain with, at that time, Czechoslovakia, with Hungary. And I have a Czech last name, but it comes from 120 years ago in a monarchy. And unfortunately, I don't speak Czech, which I regret. And it's always something I think it's such a treasure when you grow up speaking more languages. But this growing up at the Iron Curtain for me was something that has made me this very strong pro-European. But it's something that the young generation from now, and I think that's true East or West. The younger ones, like the 25-year-old or even the 30-year-old, haven't lived through that time anymore. They know it from the parents, but not them anymore. And many of these very young Europeans are very pro-European, but when they have problems with finding a job, when they, now with the refugees, when they are afraid of that, or parents are afraid that the kids will not find the jobs because there's so many refugees around that they will take the jobs away, which is not really true very often. That feeling that as European Union, we together will tackle the problems. And it will not help if every member state does it just on its own and goes against the common European interest. That, for me, is one of the biggest crises that we have. That the common factor that we are the European Union, that we haven't managed as much as we should have done. So that's why this falling back into nationalist ideas and the dangerous nationalism, and using populism against the common European project, that I find is one of the biggest problems we have, apart from the several crises that you have mentioned. And as what we have been trying to do, for example, with some of the member states where this, I mean, Orban has defined this idea of this end of liberal democracy in Europe, and he was the first one to start it. There, as European Union, we have the problem that we don't have mechanisms to make member states adhere to the common values. We have, when the European law comes about, then if a member state does not agree, does not implement this European law, there's a process where, in the end, the member state has to pay fines if they don't implement the law. For the European values, rule of law, media pluralism, a justice system that is independent from the government, from the executive, for that we don't have laws and we don't have measures to make those member states, those governments, it's not citizens, it's governments, adhere to that. And for that we need other mechanisms. I was one of the negotiators in the European Parliament for a new pact for rule of law, democracy and fundamental rights, which we got through the plenary with a very good majority, including even MEPs, members of the European Parliament from the European People's Party, where Mr. Orban's Fidesz is part of that. But the Commission is not willing to propose a law on that, on how, I mean, if you want, I can go into details, I won't do that now, how we can have a different mechanism when it comes to member states like Hungary now, like Poland, doing away with independence of the judiciary, for example, or finding ways of shutting down all kinds of critical media. There we have to find other mechanisms, but we need the Commission to propose it, and then we need a majority, a qualified majority in the Council, which isn't easy either if member states are there who don't like that. So there's a problem also when it comes to how we go about, and not just, and if we don't really are able to implement something that the Parliament has voted for. If the Parliament were to do the laws alone, without the Council, it might be easier.
Thank you very much for a very rich response, which makes me want to rebound with something you said, President Plenary, on the enlargement to the West Balkans and their accession to the EU. And Ulrike, you just said that they may find it unfair that they are not yet part of the EU because some of the evils that are sometimes talked about, like corruption or lack of rule of law, already afflict EU member states. So why do they need first to show that they are very pure before they can access the EU? So the question I would have to you is, do you think, what should be the attitude of the EU toward the accession of the Balkan countries? Should we be more demanding and have these packages like rule of law packages implemented before these countries get inside the EU? Or should we first get them inside the EU and then work with them to improve on these measures? And second subsidiary question is, do you make a difference between the Balkans and Turkey?
Well, the strategic goal should be all of them to become members of the European Union. That's the only way to guarantee lasting peace in a troubled region with a very controversial history from the past. There is no doubt about that. There is also no doubt that today in the Balkans we have, let's say, geopolitical play and crush different countries with their own approach. We see Turkey building up its influence, we see Russia building up its influence, we see China, we see even Saudi Arabia, in some in other countries, and actually we wished and we hope to see a stronger European influence in those countries. We remember very well that 15 years have passed by until the Thessaloniki agenda, which was a visionary project. Greece was always playing a very positive role, helping the others in the Western Balkans. We are very grateful because Greece was also helping us during the process of European integration. And also, probably if you look at Bulgaria and Greece, they realize how the European Union works. If you look at Bulgaria and Romania, historically Bulgaria was fighting with the Byzantine Empire for more than 1,000 years. Now we are the best friends. We love each other. You have, I don't know, hundreds of thousands of mixed marriages. And it's because of the European Union we have a lasting peace and a wonderful relationship between Bulgaria and Greece, which was not the case for thousands of years. Bulgaria and Romania, we were cut with the Danube River, never had anything together. You should remember that, for example, there was a city, Giurgiu, and Rus on the other side. The one was poisoning the other with the chemical factory, and the other would do the opposite. That was 25 years ago. And today, those two cities that poisoned each other during communist time have a common spatial planning, building bridges, coming together. People are buying from the drugstores in Romania and from the food stores in Bulgaria. They come together, they love it, and it's also in this period of time, Bulgaria and Romania became much closer together in a very sustainable. So we wish to have this with the others. And we wish this to happen as soon and as much as possible. I didn't agree with what President Macron has done 3 days ago in Sofia. I was there. I listened to him very carefully. I hoped that we all know very well Serbia and Montenegro are already having the status. They're negotiating, they're opening, they're very ambitious, they're showing a horizon, and they're working hard, and they're reforming. I hope this will be the case with Macedonia and Albania. Of course, Macedonia has to solve its name issue. It's very important. And we see a positive attempt to do so, which is also a historical chance. But the President Macron was having a bit different opinion that, for example, the German Chancellor Merkel on the Western Balkans, I could see, and that was another division you could see. But let's make it very clear. You will see them in all the different directions. No matter if this is the sanctions on Russia. I was there when we sanctioned Russia. I remember very well who said what, who has done what. I was there the whole night debating and sanctioning Russia. So there was again the opportunity to have a division on that. We see what's going on migration. We see what's going on the debt crisis. But no matter all those divisions we have, the European Union manages, which is uniquely, to find a consensus, and we managed to find a consensus 3 days ago in a very difficult situation where, for example, the Prime Minister of Spain, Mariano Rajoy, decided not to be on the council, but on the other side, he gave a solution. So he also worked for unity in a way that he came a day before that, and he actually, even Spain, has supported the Sofia Declaration and the Sofia Order on the Western Balkans, which we're so proud of. And here's my point on double speed Europe and whatever. We need to be honest, and not just me, but if you look where we are today, the President Jean-Claude Juncker, he said we do have a multi-speed Europe. Now, the point is what is going to happen in the next 4 or 5 years, and where we head in probably in a 10 years period of time. In 4 or 5 years, we're going to continue to have those divisions. We're going to continue managing them. We are going to find a consensus in a difficult, sometimes inefficient, but very important way to stand and stay together. Now we have new tensions, call it the Iran deal, call it the situation with the Paris Climate Change Agreement, and many others where we have now, even from the back, a hit from our best, most trusted, and historically unavoidable and indispensable partner, which is the United States. We love so much the United States, but we Europeans are a bit shocked, a bit worried, and on the other side, we truly believe that there is no way for the United States to be great alone. The United States could be great only with its allies, only together. And as we're not seeing that, of course, we have major dramas to face in the future, but we're going to overcome that. Patience, devotion. But where is the European going to head? This is my point. Now, okay, we have multi-speed. The European Union will start new integration project. We're going to have a new security policy, new defense policy, a European energy union, European digital union. A lot of new integration projects are starting. And here is my point. If we speak about multi-speed today, might be right, we're there. If we speak on the long term, we might be coming into two-speed, which will be a devastating scenario for the Europeans. So let's say now we have a lot of integration projects, some of them already started. For example, Schengen. Bulgaria is not in Schengen, Croatia is not in Schengen, the others are in. Or the Eurozone, which is the very heart of European integration projects. Some are in, some are out. So we do have integration projects and new ones to come. And some of them countries will be quicker managing immediately to get together. Some others might stay out. So we have multi-integration projects and multi-speeds. And my point is that one day, as we debated, and you were absolutely right, there has to be a situation where we say, if you want to be out, you're out. If you want to be in, you're in. And if you're in, then you're in. Which was probably the case with Brexit. The United Kingdom was always one leg out, one leg in, and finally they decided to be out. And then we might have to split, which is very bad. So I wish that we talk, and the President of the European Commission doesn't talk about multi-speed, but probably talks about, I would call it multi-track. For the situation we face today, we do not talk about multi-speed, but we talk about multi-track. So we have many tracks on integration projects, some old ones, some new ones. And on those tracks, it's very democratic that everyone has a chance to participate, to run. And you could be much quicker or not so quick, it's a bit smaller, but you have the chance to be integrated. And on this multi-track solution, one day, of course, the decision comes with majority of votes or whatever it is that you're in, or hopefully everyone is in. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I have prepared many more questions, but I hesitate to be the only one asking questions. So I propose that before I start a new round of questions, we may see who has questions from the audience. I can already see 2 hands. So we'll take the 2 questions, and then...
Thank you very much. 2 very simple questions. What is the motivation behind the countries who want to join the European Union when there are 11 crises taking place at the same time? A big one is on its way out. Others, there are anti-systemic governments emerging. Some came very close to it. So what is the promise? The second question is, some political economists think that the political union should have taken place before the monetary one. Now, the monetary one is on, the political union probably may never happen, and some of Mr. Macron's ideas have fallen flat. Thank you. These are my two questions.
And may I ask you to introduce yourself?
Well, I can introduce myself, but it does not represent the views of the organization I work for, so I prefer to remain anonymous. Thank you very much.
And we have a second question. We have a second question. So, the lady first, and then we have the young man.
Hello. My name is Lydia Patanova. I'm Bulgarian, and I work for the United Nations. Well, as a Bulgarian, I must be proud that my country is a member of the European Union. My husband is German, by the way. There is a lot of geopolitical discussions in the evenings, but I have two questions. My first question is, the President, Rosengren, was talking about the importance about strategic planning. And this is valid in any activity. But at the same time, we all know that politicians, whether prime ministers, chancellors, presidents, they have short-term goals. How one can reconcile this? And maybe that's part of the problem about European Union moving forward. And I have a second question. Solving the EU problems, as I've been seeing and following them, takes too long. It takes ages in a century where the world moves so fast, and we have to react in a very agile and quick way. And the President talked about, in order to move faster and forward, we need efficient institutions. And my question here is, if the EU moves so slowly to solve problems, and it takes so long that the problems deepen and become bigger, is it a problem with the EU institutions? Are they efficient enough? Thank you.
Thank you very much. And one last question. Can you give the mic? My name is Krzysztof Bertman. I come from Krakow, Poland, and I'm a master's student here at the Graduate Institute. And my question is, to all the speakers, how do you evaluate the influence of the 3C initiative on the ongoing process of division, taking into consideration that both Bulgaria and Austria are part of it, and secondly, the approval of President Trump upon it? Thank you very much. So let's first answer these questions. Maybe we want to start in the order we moved. Till, do you want to start with a short response to any questions? You don't have to address all of them. And
Let me start with sort of one interesting observation, and which is it doesn't explain anything, but it helps us to understand why political institutions and democratic polities are slow and inefficient, and why we should perhaps embrace that. Because the deep pluralism that exists in liberal polities is a pluralism that doesn't allow for quick, easy, efficient solution. Politics in a democratic society is never about efficiency, but it's about questions of participation of the many, and the question of legitimacy, and the question of equality before the law, which has many dimensions and translates also into legal equality and the rule of law. The problem then is, as I mentioned earlier, that each of these key concepts that we use as quasi-secular promises of redemption and a wonderful future contain multiple contradictions and paradoxes and antinomies that cannot be resolved. And it's not just that one has competing ideas of the rule of law. And one of the interesting elements in the German conversation about the so-called refugee crisis is that the right-wing populists have hijacked the idea of the Rechtsstaat to delegitimize the German government, arguing that it's the German government that's eroding the basic principles of the Rechtsstaat in the context of refugee policies. So it's not just that, but it's that when we look at all the major cleavage issues that riddle Europe, quote unquote, reproductive rights, quote unquote, abortion rights, which do not map neatly onto East and West, questions of refugees, as I just mentioned, questions of same-sex marriage, all very, very difficult to even address, questions of the memories of war and genocide in the 20th century, and a legacy of dictatorship and suffering, etc., etc. And they play out completely differently in different European countries and make for a different conception of liberalism and democracy, etc. So the question is, if we try to, how shall I phrase this, enforce one efficient vision of a shared European project onto a sort of cacophonic continent, what we get is a politics of exclusion in the end. And I'm not arguing that we should celebrate xenophobia or racism or homophobia or anything, but that we should try to navigate the conflicts and moral incommensurabilities that these tendencies give rise to, which is one reason why we have very little cause to celebrate Brexit, because the whole British tradition of reaching dirty compromises is something that is badly needed in the EU.
Thank you very much. Maybe Ulrike, you could address the Eurozone question and let us know how it could work better.
Well, I very much agree with you that it's important to see democratic processes, also parliamentary procedures, as something positive in a democracy, and that, yes, it takes time. Having been a long-time parliamentarian, both in the national parliament in Austria, but also the European Parliament, yes, it takes time. Nevertheless, the criticism I have, and I think not just me, but many who want this European Union to not just function better, but get things across to citizens, has to do with the difficult structure. And in that, yes, I think it's necessary to change the structures. It won't solve everything, but it would solve some things. And what I mostly refer to is the fact that, like, European Parliament cannot propose law. We cannot, I'm not there anymore, but sort of the European Parliament cannot make laws ourselves. We have to wait for the Commission to make a proposal. And then it's not just the Parliament itself, like in any regular democracy, that makes the laws, but we have to negotiate with the Council, and that means 28 member states. And in some issues, there's still unanimity. And there I find Macron's and also Juncker recently have really criticized this unanimity in foreign affairs, like on the Western Balkans, on not just accession, on any kind, on the Stabilization and Association Agreement with Kosovo, just one step. All 28 have to say yes, or leave the room in order not to be there. Yeah, but sort of, and also in tax policies. And I think that, because I think it was you referred, or whoever it was, to the question of political and monetary union. I think for me, the sort of the sin in making the monetary and currency, the common European currency, was that it was not accompanied by a common economic and fiscal policy, meaning also sort of stopping unanimity in tax issues. And the Parliament not being even involved there. You cannot have a common currency and not have a common economic policy. And I'm saying that as a member of the Green Party who nowhere has any big majorities. So quite often it would happen that my sort of political interests would not be made the ones that are made. But with compromises, you could get them. But when there's unanimity, it takes only one to say no, and then nobody can do it. And then you have to... This is what makes the European Union, and this is what I think in many things is something where citizens don't understand why this doesn't work better. So I think there, but of course it's problematic for a change of the treaties, which also Macron wants, and which I have been somebody very long fighting for that, and many others as well, would mean that all 28 heads of states or government, depending with whoever constitutionally is the one who say yes to it. Well, this is like cutting off the power of the sort of the twig of the arm of the tree that the branch of the tree that you're sitting on, yeah, and that makes you powerful. So this is very difficult. But this, for me, is one of the sins when the monetary union was created, that we did not have a common economic and fiscal policy. And there was many who were saying that. So that is one of the problems. As for political union, and there I have to say, and we talked about it a bit before, I disagree with you, because he was speaking in the European Parliament, I think 2 weeks before Brexit vote. And I reread your speech when I was coming here, because I liked your speech at that time. And at that time, I was very much against two-speed Europe, because I felt this would mean that the not so powerful ones, the smaller ones, the poorer ones, would stay outside. I have to say, by now, I do not see how this European Union will be strong also at the international level, not just economically, but also politically or in foreign affairs, if we make it a system of like multi-speed. This group does this together, the other one does that together, the third one does that together, and we continue like that. This will mean in the medium run, this European Union will fall apart. So by now I am, and I don't like it, but in order to save what we have achieved, not just on all kinds of like monetary union, but also on issues that you were mentioning, on non-discrimination, on issues of women's rights, sexual ethnic minority rights, these kind of issues that are also at the core, media pluralism, all these kinds that are important to European citizens. I think it'll fall apart if we don't get some of us together who move on. And with others being able to join. But if we just go for the multi-track and multi-speed, I think we're going to lose it, and I don't want to lose it.
Thank you very much.
I just continue your thoughts. It's absolutely right. For example, look at my country. Bulgaria is rushing into. We are willing to be part of Schengen, be part of the Eurozone. We're willing to come into the ERM, to the waiting zone of the European, because we fear, and our analysis shows that actually the new phase of integration, the strengthening of the foundations of the European Union is very probable and likely to happen within the Eurozone. And because we want not to be a periphery, but we want to be within, Bulgaria is making its own political decision, and we are rushing and we're willing to participate also within the Eurozone. Now, motivation to join the EU, let me give you two examples. The one is what is not to be in the EU. One day I talked to the president of Armenia, and I said, how is that to be in the Eurasian Union? And he said, Mr. President, I don't want to talk about that. He said, no, let's talk about that. Tell me about the Eurasian Union, I want to know. He said, well, the Russians came, took our gas transportation network, and that's it. No investments, nothing, we are poor as we were. So this might probably tell you a story and an example why the President Putin in the last 2 years didn't mention the Eurasian Union in any of his speech, which was not the case before that. One other example could be also Libya, understandable for you. One day I spent a lot of time with the President of Serbia, Nikolic, and I told him, tell me, how is because you're always so focusing on your independence, and you're proud of having a special relationship to Russia, a special relationship to China. And I'm not against Russia, I'm not against China. I think that they have their goals and we should respect that. But I asked the president of Serbia, okay, so tell me, for example, what Russia is doing for you. Because we had at the United Nations meeting where also the Chancellor Merkel was there, where the president of Serbia was telling us, now the opening speeches of President Obama, President Putin, and Chancellor Merkel, and he said, oh, we'll listen to all of the big leaders on the planet, but I will listen with my brain, but I will listen to the speech of my big brother with my heart. And then we were debating, okay, big brother, it's very nice to have it, but what is he doing for you? And the president told me, well, we have a credit from Russia, $700 million, for example, with a 7% interest rate. And I said, okay, Bulgaria, which 25 years ago was much poorer than Yugoslavia at that time, Yugoslavia much more advanced, much more developed, much more rich. Bulgaria is not getting $770 million on credit. We're getting 11.2 billion euros on help. And the president asked me, so, and what's the interest rate? I said, it's not a credit, it's a gift. So you have 700 from Russia, we have 11 billion. The one is a credit with 7% interest rate. The other one is a gift. So you're complaining that villages are devastated, not developed. You're complaining that regions are unbalanced. You're complaining that the state debt is over. But actually, Bulgaria managed in the process of European integration by not being so rich as Yugoslavia, by not being so developed, but many other countries to do. And I gave him a basic facts. Today I'm running all over the Balkans and telling these facts. The day Bulgaria started its way to European integration, our economy was 3 times less. The money for education was 5 times less. The money for Bulgarian villages and rural development was 25 times less. So, in our state debt was held at 17%, today is 25%. So in a way, Bulgaria manages to develop in a sustainable way. We're not the best, we're not, but we develop. There is a progress. You can feel, you can touch. And that's why, okay, let's put also the fact that the European Union is bringing something, but it's not about the technique, it's not about the money. Everybody in the region understands that the European Union is a project for peace, and we want to see Balkans at peace. The only way to do so is through the integration with the countries in the Union. On a long-term planning, of course I agree with you and the short-term goals of politics, but on the other side, when I was integrated, for example, with the German 50-50 strategy, it was obvious to me that the German politicians were capable of pointing at clear priorities, having a consensus on them, so that they follow them. And actually the German 2050 strategy that has 2 very basic, simple, clear priorities up to 2050. On those 2 priorities, the Germans have full unity. Whoever runs the country, they're there to build up. On the others, it's very democratic to fight, change the course, and I would dream that we see that we have a couple of priorities that make sense for any of the countries, that are a matter of national consensus. Whoever runs the country sticks to that. On anything else, it's democratic to debate. And actually, also, my point is, as I was in the private sector, I was creating jobs, I was investing, I was taking decisions. Yes, democracy generally, but also the state is not as efficient as we would love to see it. But as someone who half of his life spent in communism and half of his life in democracy, I have to tell you there is nothing better. I've seen. And yes, Fukuyama is not right. And yes, we need to understand today that democracy is not, end of history, is not prevailing. We need to understand that democracy today is a rare flower. It's a beautiful flower, but it's rare. It is a beautiful flower you need to nurture, you need to water, you need to take care every day. And if you don't do that, if you question, for example, what happens in some of the countries, members of the European Union, questioning the strength of institutions, could be the national bank, could be the independent media, could be some regulators, then of course you're endangering this beautiful flower to pick up its fruit. So because of that, yes, democracy is not efficient, but there's nothing better than that. And some dictators are much more efficient in economy planning and long-term investment initiatives. I can give you many examples, but we believe and we stand for democracy, and we should continue doing so. And last but not least, the 3C initiatives. I'll be very honest with you. I don't think there is much to happen in these 3Cs initiatives. It's one of the many. I was the founding father, together with the President of Croatia and with some others, on this initiative. It's just one of the many, but there is nothing special within it, and it has no geopolitical heavy weight. Let's say you should probably too much focus on that. It's one of the many integration projects, and you shouldn't over-expect, and we shouldn't overplan that.
Thank you very much, Ulrike.
Just a couple of sentences on the beautiful picture you had on the democracy as a beautiful flower. Because for me, that is one of the problems with some of the, yes, I would say authoritarian leaders we have in some EU member states and Western Balkans, and you mentioned Turkey even more so. That many of them, and also some of those populist movements that say that they want to defend the people, and if they get a vote, like Orban gets 2/3 of the vote after changing the rules of the electoral system, anyway, that's the majority decides, and that's how things should be. The problem is when you say democracy is such a beautiful flower, those authoritarian leaders see democracy as just one flower, like a monoculture of just one flower. All the other flowers that democracy is sort of based on, the differences and the diversity also of opinions, that is not seen by them. And I find that one of the really the challenges we face at the moment, and the dangers that democracy, because some of you mentioned the fact how the German AfD was trying to hijack the democracy and rule of law, yeah, and sort of going against Merkel, using arguments of rule of law and democracy. I find this the real big challenge we are facing. Saying that if you have a democratic vote, and if you have a democracy, and then you have a majority coming about, and then they try to not anymore accept that democracy is not the, sort of, I make it really strong, dictatorship of the majority, but it is a way of negotiating not just consensus, but majorities that take care also of the minorities, be it of opinions, be it of different groups of people, whatever. And in that, criticism is one of the, for me, it's the salt of democracy. And I often, when I talk to especially young people in many countries, it was like, you know, criticism is something that makes a democracy work. Be it with the media, be it also in debates, whatever. If you all have the same opinion, it gets so boring, come on. Yeah? But what is so important that also when you go into politics, and I guess you have seen that, and I have seen that it's not easy to be faced with criticism. You want to be liked as a human being, right? In whatever job you do. It's nicer than being criticized. But you have to learn to really accept the criticism. Otherwise, you want somebody who goes like this on all freedom of media, freedom of opinion, etc. And this is the danger we're facing now, that we have leaders who do not want to have any criticism, and who say, we're the majority, and that's it. The rest, shut up. So I just wanted to add with this beautiful flower of democracy, but I think we all have to fight for it to keep it flourishing with the diversity it has.
Thank you very much. Let's have a last round of questions. We have one here from the gentleman, two here. 5. Okay, so and I have one actually for you that I will ask right now. should you bring, which is about the euro. It's because at the Institute we actually study not only international affairs and diplomacy, but also negotiation, and that's just one small question is, are those countries who are EU member states but not yet Eurozone in the Eurozone in a good position to negotiate the future of the political union before they accede to the Eurozone? Or is the shape of the political union going to be imposed upon them by those who are at the core? So is it better to negotiate now the political union for Bulgaria rather than after? Could be translated like that.
Yes, my name is Ian Hudson. I'm an independent consultant. Very interesting discussion. And I come from a country that is famous for its digital compromises. I hope that it would be more famous for its vibrant democracy, which it certainly has at the moment, given the debates going on about Brexit. I'm very taken by the fact that all three of you have used the term so-called refugee crisis. I think if you talk to the Italians, it's not a so-called refugee crisis, it's a real refugee crisis, for which they have had not so much help from the European Union, and are still not getting help from some of the eastern countries that refuse to take migrants. And I think you can add to one of your new crises the government that's been formed in Italy, because that could shoot some major missiles towards the Eurozone and the position opposite Russia. So how do you view Italy, and why do you call it a so-called refugee crisis?
Thank you very much. I think we have two questions there and two in the center.
Hi. I'm a student here at the Institute. I'm doing my master's, and I also come from Romania. My question is for Professor Radan. You started by deconstructing the terms we started our presentation with, and my question was, given that language and our material reality are co-constitutive, and we've known this, what is our role as academics and policymakers to keep having these debates in these terms, and what would be the implications, the practical implications in terms of incentives for these countries to not feel abandoned by the EU and to still be motivated to participate and not use it as a motivation to turn their back. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is George Angel-Pritza. I have a question for President Pantanianov. You talk about multiple tracks for integration, whether it's security integration or economic integration. In those tracks, how important is it to have clearly defined stops or clearly defined measures for when you have achieved that integration, whether we're talking about integration of member states or of states that are associated member states or others. I mean, this year, 2018, for instance, if we just take an example, marks the 10-year anniversary of the Bucharest Declaration from the NATO Summit, where we had a decision that Georgia and Ukraine would be members of NATO. Just as an example of a case where there has been a decision taken on integration, how important is it if we have these multiple tracks, that we have clear measurable results where we can actually say whether a member state or an associated member state or other state has arrived?
Thank you. We have, I think, one more question in the center right there.
Thank you very much. My name is Nevena Kostova, and I'm interning here in Geneva. My question is to you all, but perhaps a little bit more to Ms. Lunatic. And it's what the implications of a two-speed or a multi-speed Europe would be for decision-making as such, because Mr. Plevnitz, you spoke about different integration projects, the Eurozone being one such project where there are some member states that are part of the Eurozone, but others that are not. But I think it's fair to say that in Europe we've already reached such a level of integration where none of these integration projects would be happening in a vacuum, and decisions taken within a project where some are participating but others are not would have knock-on effects on everyone. And of course, democracy is the rule of the majority, but it's not the rule of those that don't have a voice to speak if they're not part of this project. So, Ms. Lunacek, you said that you feel that the Union may not be may not survive unless there are multiple speeds. But I ask myself, even now we have people who believe the decisions are made without them being consulted, which is not the case. But wouldn't it be even more so that when European Parliament elections, European Union elections come, there will be more people who are disincentivized to vote or who would be voting for populist parties saying, well, now I'm definitely not represented by this European Union. Thank you.
And let's just take the two last questions, but keep them very short. Or one last question, because we are supposed to finish in 4 minutes, but we started with 8 minutes delay, so we'll take that last question and then 3 minutes each.
Hello, my name is Yavor Tonev. I'm Bulgarian Swiss, and I work for the Swiss Armed Forces, but I'm here for myself today. My question was, we spoke of a refugee crisis, and I would like to know, during the refugee crisis in Bulgaria, where was the help and assistance from more experienced European countries for this crisis? First-hand knowledge that it was a huge crisis for Bulgaria, the country wasn't ready, and what did the EU do to support in such a time of crisis?
Thank you. Till, maybe you want to answer first?
Yeah, very briefly on the refugee crisis. In principle, I think a quota system is an excellent idea. The reality, however, is that the EU member states will never reach a compromise, a dirty compromise on that, and therefore it seems to me that something that the Visegrad states have called flexible solidarity may actually work better, so that the countries that accept refugees are rewarded through the EU budget, if I understand correctly. And it's not that Hungary or Poland are forced to accept refugees who don't want to go there anyway. So that's the kind of dirty compromise I had in mind when I said the EU is, like any other democratic polity, not just a multi-level governance institution, but an institution that thrives on dirty compromises. So the incentives for the countries to enter in these kinds of conversations, it seems to me, get to the heart of what still continues to be a divide between the Cold War West and the Cold War East, namely that people talk past one another and misunderstand one another because there's a huge cultural asymmetry in terms of knowledge. So if you have a representative of a Polish intellectual community, Czech intellectual community, talking about Germany or France, you immediately, even Britain, you immediately get a sense that they have a deep knowledge of German, French, British intellectual, cultural, philosophical traditions. So they have all read Habermas. The question is, how much Polish does Habermas know, and how much does Habermas even know about Polish philosophical and intellectual traditions? And there's an asymmetry which continues to mark European intellectual conversations about such matters. And this brings me to the question of what is it that we could potentially do in terms of in these kinds of institutions. And it seems to me that the European Union today is not doing a very good job. The only European university funded by the EU in Florence is basically modeled on the École Nationale d'Administration. So you have law and economics and politics and a bit of history that starts after the Reformation. So there is not only no ancient history, no medieval history, but there is no philosophy. There is no literature. There are no arts. There is no theology, etc. So the very scholarly traditions that challenge us to take ambiguity, ambivalence, paradoxes seriously, that allow us to navigate the deep pluralism that is at the heart of the European project, are completely absent at the European University Institute in Florence. And the question is, how does that come about? This is a different matter, but it's striking and it's funny, and I think that the EU is in desperate need of different fora that allow us to have these kinds of conversations.
Ulrike, and I will just say that it's not because we don't have a history, a philosophy department here that we're not attentive to complexity and ambiguity.
Okay, I'll try to answer your question about this idea whether two-speed Europe or even the multi-speed one wouldn't make more people abstain from going to vote or voting for the populists because it doesn't help to connect to people. That's what I understood. Well, I think no matter whether it's two-speed or multi-speed or just go on as we are, which is multi-speed already in a way, this will not help to bridge this gap of distrust that already exists. So there, other measures have to be taken. And I know, like for the next European elections, there are already some ideas of how to at least try to convince, or not just convince, to communicate, to dialogue with more of citizens to explain why, what the asset of this European Union is, especially for those who have all this criticism and who are disappointed and who feel it's only lots of money goes there but nothing happens. So other measures have to be taken. The structures as such will not help to make citizens more that they will trust the European Union more. Yeah? But you should have this kind of, that Macron also mentioned that we have from the European Parliament for times we have said that we have to have this like dialogue with the citizens in all member states, yeah? Discuss, invite, and be it government, with the governments, with NGOs, with civil society, with also those people who are very critical of the EU, because that is something that really has been lacking. And of course, and I think you were discussing this here before, I think Ms. Raderia mentioned it, the fact that European elections are campaigned at national level only, at member states level, that we do not have European parties. We have European parties, but we do not have European transnational lists. Is something that really harms this European election process, I think. Because, I mean, with the Spitzenkandidat, the idea of having the leader, well, the lead candidates of each European political party be the ones who campaign or compete with each other for who will be the head of the European Commission, voted then by the European Parliament, was something that in 2014 helped a bit. But I think, for example, the European Broadcasting Union should, before the European elections, not just broadcast the Spitzenkandidaten debates once or twice in the different public broadcasters all over the EU, but they should do that with lots of candidates in different languages, with interpreting or without, whatever. There's lots of European parliamentarians who speak different languages. This, I think, would help to make citizens understand better, now especially in the European Parliament from my side, what the positive things are about it. It won't help with all of it, but some might help. On the issue of the refugee crisis, the so-called one that you had, well, I think the problem with calling it the refugee crisis is that it makes sort of the refugees the perpetrators, the ones who do bad, who do something wrong. And I think what in fact it is, and you mentioned it, it's a crisis of solidarity, which the EU is based on principle. That's why I always say the so-called one. Of course you're right, and you said yourself, Italy and also Greece, they were left alone by the other member states, and also from the Commission, at least for one, not for a long time. And on Italy as such, look, I would have, and I think it was wrong of Mr. Renzi to tell his party not to go into government coalitions, negotiations with Cinque Stelle, with the Five-Star Movement. Because the Five-Star members of the European Parliament, quite a few of them that I got to know, were ones who are not on the very anti-EU and anti-refugee side as some others of Cinque Stelle are. So I think it would have helped if the PD, the Partito Democratico, would have helped if there were a government now with them. Well, they decided differently. Renzi decided for them. I think it was not a good choice. And what we're going to have now with the two of them, I don't know.
Presidents always speak last. So, closing remarks. On the Eurozone, I would agree with you that the situation changed and the changes will be more imposed than, let's say, agreed. And what happens is that with the Brexit, something very seriously changed in the Eurozone, because you might be asking a question, why in the Eurozone? But you see, there were countries in the Eurozone and countries outside the Eurozone. Now, Bulgaria was a country outside the Eurozone, like many others, Hungary, Poland, and others. And we had the United Kingdom being out of the Eurozone as a very strong advocate of our interests, the countries that are not in the Eurozone. United Kingdom was a big, very strong economy, very strong voice, and the United Kingdom had a very special relation to all of us, the countries outside the Eurozone, synchronizing solutions, working together. So the United Kingdom was our advocate. Now they're not there anymore at all. So we're left alone. Also with the United Kingdom, countries outside the Eurozone were having a heavy weight because the economy of the United Kingdom was very big. Now without the United Kingdom, the size of the economies outside the Eurozone is shrinking dramatically. So there will be more, let's say, imposed than a process of years of conversations, this and that. But I definitely believe that the Eurozone will be the platform for new integration projects to come up. And just, for example, Italy could catalyze one of those. For example, speaking about the European monetary, the so-called European IMF, the European, because just the ESM has done a great job speaking about solidarity. Come on. Ireland was in trouble, Portugal was in trouble, Spain was in trouble, Greece was in trouble, and the European Stability Mechanism was brought, and it helped with 440 billion euros, big time. And when banks in Ireland gambled on the international markets, Ireland was making 36% of deficit per 1 year, totally shut out of the markets. The European Stability Mechanism was there to help, to give hope, and to help restructure, and Ireland came back big time. It's a wonderful country and an amazing example of what can you do when the European Union and the European instruments are not used in a propaganda way, and when you do not point at the European Union as a convenient excuse of national mismanagement, which unfortunately could be the case today with Italy. I know very well the Prime Minister Berlusconi. My very first days being in politics as a minister, I was dreaming to listen to him, hoping to see him. He came to Bulgaria. I pushed on the first row to follow his speech, and he spoke 45 minutes jokes about himself. I was totally devastated. And then there was a dinner. And because I always ask some more difficult question, the Prime Minister told me, you ask a question. Okay. And then my question to the Prime Minister Berlusconi was, after he spoke 1.5 hours on the dinner of, I would not mention, but it's more linked to, let's call it diplomatically, gender equality. And then I said, Prime Minister, what are the industries of the future Italy is willing to address? And which of those Bulgaria has a chance as a friend of Italy to participate so that together we could develop something, or Bulgaria could be part of your plan to address the industries of the future and the new industrial revolution? And Berlusconi looked at me and said, Mr. Minister, you know what? You want to talk about the industries of the future? Go to Germany. That was his answer, honestly, to me. So I truly believe that Berlusconi was a populist. If you follow the Facebook profile of Matteo Renzi, I followed that profile very carefully. His promises, remember the 100 days, then they became 1,000 days. He just added 1 0. Remember the very fun thing Prime Minister Matteo Renzi has done. He changed the cars from Audis to Fiat. If this is the deep reform, I would question it. So I would be very frank and very open with you. As a difference to Ireland that made brave reforms, suffered but recovered as an example of national responsible approach, using the European given hand and help in a wise way to recover and prosper. I have seen, unfortunately, I love so much Greece, I truly love so much Italy, but I don't see this approach. I truly believe that today what happened with the Italian elections, we can comment a lot about the political parties, the government is coming. To me, the most important is the vote of Italian people. And the vote of Italian voters, to me, sends the signal that they're not willing to take responsibility on their own matters in their own countries. Italian voters are not willing to support those who have a plan to restructure, reform, and move forward. Italy has an amazing industry. Italy is actually the second biggest industrial power of Europe after Germany. And I'm very sorry about what is going to happen, because Italian voters gave the wrong message. 3 out of 4 parties are nationalist, populist. They will look at the European Union as a convenient excuse of national mismanagement. And I'm giving you another example. Again, I love Greece so much. I have a house in Greece. I spend a lot of time on my vacations in Greece. And I always talk to fishermen, agricultural workers. I love all of them. I say, tell me about the European Union and the Greek crisis. And they say, the Brussels, Germany, and the United States were pushing us to buy German submarines and American F-16s. And because of that, we have this mountain of debt. I just checked on the website of the World Bank. And if you look at the balance sheet of Greece, then you will see that the German submarines are 8 billion euros. And the American F-16s might be 16. Altogether it's 20-something, but the Greek debt is 350. So I always ask my friends in Greece, okay, now speaking about submarines and F-16s, this is 20 billion. Now tell me about the other 330 billion. How did you spend the money? Why don't we have an honest debate in Greece? It's a wonderful country. But why don't we even today have an honest debate about the fathers and the mothers who raised their salaries, their pensions on pump without the money being produced? The money has been borrowed, and today you just pay the price. And actually the check always comes because, as you know very well, capitalism is about not having free lunch. Free lunch we had in communism. And we bankrupted because of that. So you need to make your own clear numbers. Could be your family, could be yourself, your own budget. And you need to have responsibility on your affairs. Could be Italy, could be Greece, could be your family, could be my family. I take the lead. Brussels helps big time, if you know how to use it. And Greece was helped by Brussels big time. Italy was helped in the migration crisis. I totally agree with you. We should not call it so-called. It's the crisis is not solved. But look at Bulgaria, for example. You asked a question about the refugee crisis. My country was helped. And there is, I'm very proud that we have honest politicians in Bulgaria who are not pointing at the European Union as a convenient excuse for mismanagement, but they say, okay, you helped, thank you so much. The European Union was bringing Frontex to Bulgaria, helping Bulgaria in a difficult moment. We were given money to build up security on our borders, and also we invested. And in the beginning, actually, it was like this. Greece was given something like 400 or 500 million euros help. Bulgaria was given 5. We invested 10 million in our own money. But that's about the responsibility of every one of us. To help, to act, and not just to point on Brussels and do not reform, do not act, and do not care. So to me, and I'm finishing by my total understanding that the European Union, for me, is my family. It's not somebody else. It's not somebody who I can point conveniently. And when my family is in trouble, I have to support it. I have to act. And general remark today, in the European Union, I wish to have a stronger debate, and I wish to see stronger political decision-making process, just political decision. In the past, political decision was the decision. When there is no other decision, when there is difficult, with trouble, with problem, we have record number of crises, then politicians stand together, come together, and take a political decision. And everybody respected that. Today, political decision is in many cases no decision at all, which is bad. There is a lot of inflation into the political decision-making process, and we need to come back. But also coming back to the true value of political decision, which is a very different, difficult, but important decision when there is no other hope. I wish to see more political-driven decisions in the European Union and bold decisions. I wish to see the European Union continuing being developing and supported. I wish to see the European Union that acts as a family and that everybody contributes. And those are not dirty deals. I think it's fair. We go to the Canadian model or to the American model on migration. If you don't want to have refugees, or some countries are saying, we don't want to have Muslim refugees. The president of Slovakia was telling me, he's a wonderful guy, I love him. But he was telling me, Rosen, we don't want to have a single mosque in Slovakia. I said, okay, we have 1,500 mosques in Bulgaria, so what? The president of the United States is pointing at Muslims willing to abandon their entry visas. What is he telling me? 10% of my population is Muslim. And they're wonderful, hardworking people, well integrated. They're definitely not terrorists. Integrate. The only weapon the European Union has is integration. And I want to see bold political decision into firing the integration engine. Could be the Western Balkans, could be the energy union, could be the banking union, and to continue firing up the integration engine, because that's the only way to have lasting peace in Europe. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So I just wanted to thank the Albert Hirschman Center, Democracy, the Club Diplomatique, and also the Mission of Bulgaria for having organized this great debate. Thank you.